Okay, welcome to our work session, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We are going to start today with board and commission interviews, and we have with us, I think we all know, Mr. Randy Drilling us.
Drilling gas.
Drilling gas?
He says it really.
Okay. I had it, and then I looked at it and I lost it, so I apologize. Would you like
Just
to?
one L is the most important.
Okay,
It's
just
not two L's.
That I know.
Okay, oh yeah, but it's with the dotted eyes, when you don't have good eyes, you can't see. Come on over this way. Randy is interviewing for the old Webster Special Business District, which has a vacancy now, but then we'll also have a vacancy come December when one of the current members is gonna leave their store and retire. So we just ask you to say a little bit about why you'd like to serve and what you think you might bring to this commission.
Okay. Well, hello all. I'm Randy Drillingus. I work at the Webster Kirkwood Times newspaper. I'm a publisher there. And the reason I want to get into it, there's multiple reasons, but one of the big reasons is I love our community. I'm now a business owner in that community, and I feel it's my obligation to kind of know a little bit more about how things work and how things go on. And that coincides with my kids growing up. I have a senior in high school, senior in college. They'll be moving on, so now I'm gonna have some time to do things actually, as opposed to, do other things actually. Not that I'm not doing anything now. But so I figure it's a good time for me. I feel like I have a lot going. I need to keep myself busy for the next, 15, 20 years. And I feel like the more I take on like this, it's going to be better for me. And I feel like I can do a good job. I hope I can do a good job. I've always been a problem solver. And I've had the ability to, I used to be a left brain person. I was a creative director, graphic designer, guitar player, all that stuff, all the way up until the pandemic, until we bought the Webster Kirkwood Times. And now I'm doing all kind of the right side of the brain type things, and it just the left side helps the right side. I feel like in creating good solutions and creative solutions to get things done and in a good way that is benefits as most the most people as possible in that regard.
All right, anybody have questions?
I just have one. So being on the commission and you being a publisher a couple of times, you will be able to separate what goes on in the meeting and what you actually publish.
I definitely will. It sounds like a conflict of interest type of question. I don't really work that way, and I think that's probably my left side of my brain talking when I say that, because I look at something as a goal to accomplish, and I'm here to do this what's best for whatever the discussion is going on there. Not with any, I don't see how things that we would be necessarily doing would be something that I would really want to use in any way, shape, or form. It'd be news that everybody would know about anyway, because these are things that are happening in our city. So I don't see any way that would be, any problem there. I also, there's things in our paper I disagree with all the time, but I understand their need for them and I understand why that's there, and I see both sides of the story. And so things go no matter what it is. And so I can separate myself from the issues all the time. That's what I do. Yeah.
And I guess I thank you for that, because it's related to what I was gonna ask. I'm just gonna be a little more specific. Generally you'll be in a public meeting, so it won't matter really. I mean, I appreciate your answer and the way you provide input into that. Occasionally, it's not gonna happen much, because 99% of the time it'll be open meetings, but occasionally it'll be a closed session, which then is essentially by law has to be kept
Right.
only to those in the room. And you're comfortable with that?
I would have to do that.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, that would just be the case. I don't know how comfortable I'd be, but I would hold on to it until,
Okay.
the end. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Mhm.
I also appreciate you admitting that it might not be comfortable. 'Cause
Well, yeah,
sometimes
I mean,
it's not
that-
comfortable for us either. So.
Yeah, right.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Have a
we-
great meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have another interview.
I don't believe he's here yet.
Okay, so
His
we'll-
son had a soccer game, and I'm hoping after you do your.
We'll do
issues
updates,
He'll
yeah.
be here.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, so we will proceed on to that. And, Jamie, you said you had them all written down, so why don't we start with you?
Okay, yes, Mayor. The BDC has a lot going on. Our little business areas are hopping. Blue Dot goes live tomorrow, I think, according to my notes. There is a BDC coffee for the community to attend tomorrow morning at the rec center. I think 8:30 is the start time. Let's see, all the businesses kind of got together organically and met on Monday morning. And so that was, I think, fruitful. And they felt like good energy. So that's nice that they're all communicating, especially entering the fourth quarter. Jazz Fest is Saturday. There's a pickleball tournament the weekend after on the 28th in Crossroads. October is in Old Webster Walktoberfest. And then a new kind of all Webster Fall Fest that will be happening at the end of October. So that's my update.
Nice. Emily?
Sure. So Green Space Commission met last week. We've got a few things coming up. One is the next kind of eco ed and really the last one for the season, if I remember correctly, is on Tuesday, October 1st at 5:30. I know they are often at the same time as council. This is at least a little bit earlier. So if you're interested in it, you can maybe do, I'm gonna try to hit both. It's a watershed wander along Shady Creek. So they're meeting at Larson Park at 5:30. So that should be of interest. And then we've got the Green Our City tree planting on October 5th. So working with Public Works on that. It's very organized. It's gonna be a great event for that. So anybody who's looking to be on a volunteer planting team, let me know. And then we've got out a little bit further on October 26th is Make a Difference Day. There'll be several projects and I'm sure more to be announced for that as well. So those are kind of the key dates. The Plan Commission did not meet in September, what we on the first Monday in October to continue that discussion. And then tomorrow, I don't know who else is going, but we're all going to the MSD talk for municipal. So.
The leaders luncheon.
Thank you for for putting that and pausing to make sure I don't have to come back later. I think I'm good.
It's okay. That's where we always send it to it. Pam, would you like to go next?
Sure. The Old Orchard Business District met last week and a lot of just kind of maintenance things, but the one thing they're talking about is creating the Merchant and Business Association, which is gonna be kind of like the sister organization that is the Old Webster Trade Association. They're gonna be doing that in Old Orchard in order for them to kind of take more ownership on with the gazebo series and holiday lighting, things like that. So that's the main thing they were speaking about. And then the other thing is, I didn't know, did you mention David Wilson for the watershed walk?
I didn't mention his name, but he is.
So yeah, he's kind of known St. Louis citywide for his expertise in watersheds, and he's a Webster resident. So that's who's going to be leading the walk. That's all I have.
Nothing for me, Madam Mayor.
Nothing from the mayor.
Go ahead, Maria. We're gonna give Karen a minute. I know.
The only thing I had was the introduction of our YC League Fellows. Do
Please.
you want to do that now or wait till
Let's
regular?
go ahead and do it right now since we're early in the meeting.
Do you
We may do it again in the regular meetings because I may need some more people
Yes.
here.
Hello everyone, I'm Lydia from Myanmar, from Southeast Asia. I'm the one of the YCE Professional Fellowship here. And I'm gonna spend a month in the Missouri in the city of Webster group. And today we went to the public walks. We kind of see the project and then Sinan bring us to the really interesting sites ongoing, also implemented in the new coming plan. So we are really excited to be here and we are learning a lot of moving things from the city of Webster groups, and I hope I can bring something back to my country and implement something maybe that individual level. But I'm also looking for a national level. How could I support on the green transition? Because my background is renewable energy, so that's what I'm really looking forward to learn from every one of you, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Why don't you come this way, just a little bit, so you're getting closer to the microphone.
hi, I'm Carrie. I'm from Laos. I'm one of the member of one of the participant of the Wisely Young Professional program. So I will be here same period like yes 1 month. So I'm working with the NGO along with support the Lao government to develop the green goals development in Laos. Also support most of the greens work that we will put in the national strategy. And yes, and many projects that we working in our organization have like a sustainable development, such as solid waste management, wastewater management project, which is very huge. So I hope to learn something from here and to be to put in my career development and also bring something back to my community and my country.
Great, thank you. We're happy to have you. Mr. City Attorney,
How can I follow that up? I have.
you're really just not that interesting.
That's right. I accept that.
Karen, do you have any updates?
No, I do not.
Okay. I have a couple, went to the Webster Grove School District barbecue, and I just want to say that Tiara Thompson is a treasure for us. She had a great set of swag that the kids loved from the city and talked with lots of students and parents, and it was a great afternoon. The weather was beautiful, couldn't beat that. You all received a letter about the new lease place, the reapplication, attended a meeting about that, and they seem to be moving right along. Did a talk with Mayor Gibbons of Kirkwood with the League of Women Voters, which was more fun than was work. And then I got a text today from Pastor Eric Hayes. Old Community Baptist Church is having their annual barbecue Saturday from 12 to 4 and wanted to invite all of council and all of staff. So if you're available, please stop by. And then I had a great meeting with my new friend Nora, who wrote to me in the Webster Kirkwood Times about some issues on Lyman Place. So it's great to see somebody who is a seventh grader who came and, she did all the talking herself. Her parents did the talking. It was really great. Crossroads met, moving on toward their work. They are maybe the one business district that is still thinking about a community investment tax. So we may hear something about that later this fall. They're still finalizing their plan, but it should, we'll get an informational brief and then they'll have to go work on it based on our feedback before we have to make any final decision. Traffic Advisory Commission also met. They are beginning to think about crosswalks in our community and looking at some different best practices for crosswalks. And obviously are very excited that the SS4A kickoff is Thursday. Is that right?
Next
Next week. Okay. But anyway, so I think that's it. All right. Does anyone have anything else? All right, I skipped over reviewing the regular agenda. I do want to make one note.
John is here for you.
Okay, as soon as I do that, John, we will get to USB John.
I am.
Hi, John. Reviewing the regular agenda, we put the indoor pool discussion on too early. Karen and Scott are going to meet before the next Park and Recreation Commission meeting with some residents who had some ideas, and we wanted to have that conversation before we had the pool discussion at the council level. And so we just got our calendars a little mixed up. So we'll skip that today, just so you all know.
I was just gonna ask, what is the indoor water park discussion?
So basically we have to decide whether we're going to put it on the ballot in 2025, whether we're going to put it on the ballot in the next couple of years, or whether we just need to, sort of put to bed the discussion because we've had it a couple times, or at least set a time certain in the future, whether it's 2 or 3 years from now to come back, because it's just still hanging around.
And I thought they also wanted to share some potential other options for generating revenue, something to help.
Yeah, and that is, yes, that is my understanding. And that's part of the reason that our discussion should wait until after you have that meeting.
So would the idea be to go out for another bond potentially in to increase the amount that we've already.
Well, we would have to discuss, so the question has always been operating revenue.
Yeah,
And what is, you can't really bond operating revenue,
Yeah.
so would it be another kind of tax? That's the discussion. Do we want to really go down that road right now, or do we want to postpone that until we have a more general revenue discussion?
gotcha.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, sure. All right, so we will go back to our interviews. John Lewis is here to interview for the Crossroads Special Business District Commission. And John, if you would just come stand over here for a minute so they can see you better on camera. And all we're gonna ask you to do is tell us why you want to be on the commission and what you think you might bring to it.
Sure. Well, the reason I want to be on it is because I own 3 of the buildings, and 2 of them, I'm a partner in the businesses that are operating in those. So I have a vested interest in, what happens in the industrial district. I spent 17 years in IT. I just sold a business that I started in 2015, grew to 90 employees, and here I am.
Any questions?
Which businesses are you connected to in Crossroads?
Sylvie D's,
Okay.
and then the new Alcom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And then Descendant is our tenant.
It's exciting, all the growth that's happening.
There's some exciting things going on there too, especially with the structural changes, road. and things.
Yeah, I'd like to learn more about that.
Oh, every month.
Lucky you.
Mhm.
How'd the boys do?
Well, we're tied 1-1 right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Overtime.
We better let you get back then.
Okay.
No, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for your
Yeah,
time.
and you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go.
Thank
over
you.
here.
I'll
Yeah.
see the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get on to our topics, and we're gonna start with the long-awaited, not long-awaited, but there is anticipation
Much
for the stormwater master plan update. And who am I calling on to begin this process?
So I'm going to turn it over to Sanan, and if you would introduce INL, please. And as Sanan is making his very short walk over here, I want to acknowledge Renee Tyler as well. Between Renee and of course Vera Cavato and Sanan, there's been a ton of work in this INL, and just really pleased with where we've gotten so far and looking forward to the discussion. Sanan.
Yes, Mayor Arnold, council members. The discussion on hand today is the stormwater management plan and update, the progress update for yourselves to review. Because as you know, last month, our council approved an adder of fee to our consulting contract for additional points of responses for review. So we actually have a current plan, a draft plan for the responses that have been reviewed, but now the new responses will be reviewed and added to it. So this is a progress report for you. Tim Dean with Intuition and Logic will present this. His firm is working on the contracted services for the city of Webster.
So Tim, I think the idea is that there's a chair for you close up there. You can manage that, and hopefully you'll be well covered by a mic.
I should be all right. Should be good.
Oh, that works fine.
So,
Kim, would you rather sit right here?
I am perfectly fine. Thank you very much,
You're
though.
welcome.
I actually prefer standing for most of these. It's just more habit. I tend to wander a little bit. So, thank you all for having me here this evening. And we're going to talk about the stormwater master plan, kind of where we're at to date. And if you would, just kind of hold any questions to the end. We'll get through this fairly quick and keep you guys on your way. So the stormwater master plan is actually an update to the last plan, which was done in 2002. The city had really 3 main goals in doing this update. 1, update the projects that were in there. 2, update the prioritization methodology so that we've got a scoring metric to keep everything on a nice level playing field. And then really be able to reach out and get all of that public input. So part of that, again, we want to be able to get all of that public feedback, identify those problems, because most of the people know what's going on in their backyards. Beyond that, we walked all of the stream channels. We wanted to be able to map all of those corridors and identify any problems people may not be aware of. And as far as all that goes, we are evaluating all of those problem areas that we identified and then come up with potential solutions and put a dollar to them. So you have a capital improvement program budget to look at. The final step in that is an implementation strategy, which recommends how to get things done. Now, the main components of a stormwater master plan, there's really 6 main features here. Public involvement, your hydraulics, hydrology, your problem sites, stream stability, and a watershed inventory. All of those things come together to form your master plan. They have different key components there. They all feature to a specific element. So before we get into any specifics on the plan itself, let's talk about the benefits of a master plan. This really creates that defensible engineering-based tool so that the city is not just responding to those squeaky wheels in any of those districts. You have a defensible position with which to rank all of the problems so that those taxpayer dollars are providing the best and highest benefit to the residents of the city as a whole. The other real big thing that I would point out on that one, there we go, is it really helps address the stormwater funding options. So having a master plan helps you go after targeted grants. Think in terms of like the 319 grants, puts you in a much better position to go after those type of funds. Now, there's really 3 phases to a master plan. First one is doing that inventory, identifying the problem areas. Then we're going to do a review of them, come up with some engineering solutions, and then go through the categorization and prioritization process. Throughout this whole process with the city, this whole thing has been transparent with the public. We've had that public input phase, reaching out and getting all of those questions and finding out about the problem areas. So just initially, we had really good response on the survey. I can't emphasize that enough. 406 responses to the stormwater questionnaire were received. Initially, we did have some issue getting some of the responses out of the survey tool. Right out of the gate, we had about 198 problem areas identified, along with some historical information provided by the city. Generally, that's a kind of a heat map of where those problems were really concentrated that we were identified. Once we were able to get all of that information out of the survey, we were actually able to find that we had not 198 real problem areas, but 499. So a few more to look at. And you may wonder, 408, but there's 499. People are complaining about multiple things, like hey, something's going on in my yard here. There's also some street flooding, and oh, my backyard shed is going underwater every time it rains. But just looking at this, the yellow stars are the CIP problem areas that we identified initially. And the blue dots are what was addressed by those CIPs, along with the channel problem areas. The red dots, just to give you the contrast, are all of the additional points that we're able to get out of the survey documents. So as we're still thinking about that phase 1 effort, part of that is walking all the channels, looking for those stream stability issues. These are all of the channels we walked through there. It was over 8.5 miles of stream. We used a very rigorous channel assessment process and collected a bunch of field data while we were out there using our field tablets. Very quick process, able to do all that fairly well. Just a little bit of background. I've done this a few times. This is actually my 55th watershed master plan. So I've gotten pretty good about getting field data. When we talk about reviewing some of those sites, once we've gathered all that information, we go into a desktop review, which means we look for what's the drainage areas? Are we in floodplains? What's the historical complaints in that area if there's any available information from city records? All of that stuff kind of comes together so that we can get out on site walk those problem areas and really identify what those problem limits are. Is it a blocked inlet? Do we have a capacity issue? How far does it extend? Once we get through that effort, phase 3 is categorizing that. And what we mean by that is the prioritization ranking system. This is based on MSD's methodology. We've expanded it to help address some more focused areas for the city. By and large, though, this is a very consistent methodology used in the region, and it helps produce a weighted score. There's problem areas and benefits areas, and depending on how severe the problem is, it gets criteria scoring metrics. So those scores all come together and you weigh that against the cost and you get a benefit cost ratio. And that's how you try to do an implementation. You can rank them greatest to least benefit then. What I would say is the CIP program, that process it's just a tool. It's an engineering-based tool for the city. Just because something is weighted really high, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to move forward as a project either. So when we talk about what we had from MSD, some of the things that when we think of MSD as an entity, they're most focused on their stormwater sanitary infrastructure. So any prioritization methodology that they have is going to be geared more towards those things. From the city's perspective, it's a great basis, but you're also responsible for your roads, all of those crossroad culverts, some of the enclosed systems. So we want to add some weighting criteria for those things, particularly also the natural resources like those parks. At some point, I'm going to remember to turn off my timings on that slide before I hit these. But at the end of the day, we added these criteria to help tailor it to the city. So if there's threats to park areas, things that the city owns and operates, those also get scored and weighted as well. We want to help preserve some of those areas. From a prioritization standpoint, highest and best use for the city dollars is always going to be those public safety concerns. These are typically manifest in structural concerns. So threats to buildings, threats to roadways, threats to culverts, anything that can impact daily residents and multiple residents. Those are the ones that are going to get those higher weighting factors and float to the top of those lists. And when we think about that, again, I want to emphasize that this is just a guidance tool. It's going to give you that defensible decision-making matrix to help with those selection process. When we got through looking through all of the problem areas out there, there's two main type of categories. Channel problems, typically stream erosion, channel instability, and street flooding, yard flooding issues. So things where we have structure flooding is kind of the highest and best use in that category. All right. So moving forward, as you start thinking about how to implement the CIP program, additional problems will come up from time to time. Perfectly fine. That's why we have that prioritization tool that helps rank new problem areas using the same categories as everything else so that you can fold it into the mix and re-rank it on a glance. But when you start looking at how to implement something into an actual CIP, the overall process flows through this. We identify the problem, make a determination whether it's a public or a private problem. Now, from the city's perspective, there wasn't a lot of distinction between public and private. Other municipalities, they'll say like yard flooding if it's less than 6 inches deep. Typically, that's more considered a private issue rather than something that would be on a city CIP program. The real rationale for that is shallow yard flooding doesn't really rank really high on the cost benefit ratio. So it's going to be on the very bottom of the list typically. But once it gets identified, it goes through the prioritization system. It's very annoying, my apologies. Goes through the prioritization, gets a ranking, and then those scores are weighted highest to lowest. You look at those highest weighted ones, and as a city, you look at your funding mechanisms, where those dollars are coming from, and you put together typically a 5-year window, identify those programs. Sometimes you may have funds to do 1 or 2 projects. And sometimes you may skip down the list in order to fit what's available in the budgets. So again, it's just a tool to help get those decisions made. So right now, before we've had a chance to go look at those additional sites, here's the recap on where the analysis is. We got through all of those 198 problem areas initially, boiled it down to about 86 CIP program areas to address those problems. 49 of those were channel, 37 were street flooding, with an overall program of 48 million. And just because we like all sorts of bar charts and graphs and things, here's how those kind of metrics stand up. 22 million is channel, 27 million is the street flooding, generally because we're doing a lot of road, stormwater inlets, things along those lines. When we think about that in terms of percentages, about 57% of that is the street flooding issues. And I do anticipate that percentage to actually grow as we add the additional sites, because the additional sites are mostly focused around streets and yards, very little on the channels. When we talk about those prioritization benefit scores, those are ranked high to low, okay? So anything over a 1 has a positive cost benefit ratio. When you start organizing those in terms of priority, your scores greater than 1 typically all fall into the top. So out of that scores above 1, we're around an $8 million CIP program. In between there, we have another 4.5 million in that middle range. That'll be that 1 to 0.5. Those are the ones, if I'm looking at a 10-year CIP level, those will probably be targeted around the years 7 to 10. Those are when those will probably start making it up onto the list. Everything in that 0.5 range or less, those are the ones that's that long range plan. That might be on a 20-year horizon type of time frame. So being able to communicate that with the residents when they're asking about, hey, where's my problem? Well, here's where you stacked up relative to every other problem in the watersheds. Let's skip back over. Here we go. All right. From a program results standpoint, the program that has direct threats to structures, we had about 11 million in that. I don't anticipate that changing very much with the additional values from the structures standpoint. But those will be all those ones that typically were in that 1 to that 0.5 to over 1 categories. Those will all have those structure flooding assessments for them. When we talk about, where in the watershed am I? Those scores that were greater than 1, so the ones that are likely to be in your 5-year CIP program, this is what it breaks down to within the watershed itself. Deer Creek had about 77%, and then McKenzie Creek had about 23% breakdown of the projects themselves. It's actually good news because Deer Creek has the OMCI funding as well, which helps you stretch those dollars further. From the next step standpoint, once we've submitted the report with this update, we'll have a chance for all of council and the city to comment on the plan, provide any comments, we'll get those incorporated, and then be able to finalize the planning document itself. This sets us up for identifying some of those available funding mechanisms, the OMCI grants, the new stormwater benefits tax that MSD has for the imperviousness, as well as anything like 319 grants, EPA, or DNR. Beyond that, again, this is a guidance document, so it helps establish, it's a tool to help you make decisions with. One of the things we'll do right out of the gate is really establish that CIP program. And that's one of the things city staff will do once they have the report in hand. They're going to take that initial list, look at their funding mechanisms, and stack up those top tier projects to see how well they can best fit the budgets. From an implementation standpoint, any of those recommended 5-year CIP is going to go to city council for approval, for discussion. We want to do these now. Do we want to table it? Do we want to prioritize another one? that's all the fun discussions that you guys get to have in the future. And by and large, everything's going to be listed in that CIP. So the real benefit here is that no information is ever lost. Resident calls up, they have a complaint, it gets ranked, prioritized. You have a worksheet in there. At any point, if the problem changes, you can go back and rescore it and see how it re-ranks. So if channel erosion gets worse and it, when we initially looked at it, it was 20 feet from the house. Well, it's been a couple of years and maybe there was some really bad erosion. Now it's 2 feet from the house. That changes the scoring metrics. My recommendation typically on these is don't rescore stuff just because of a squeaky wheel. Rescore it if there's material changes in the yards or out on site. That just helps keep everything on those kind of even playing fields across the board. So with that, let's just open it up if you guys have any questions. Went through that fairly quick, but.
So thank you very much for doing this. This is excellent. I have a lot of questions, I think, and I'm going to begin first with the idea on the return on investment here.
Mhm.
So we're making changes to the flow of water. Doesn't that require our neighboring municipalities to do something different sometimes? Like, isn't this all interconnected? Whereas if we make a change, aren't we just pushing the water someplace else that causes a problem? And I use Brentwood Bound as an example. Because Brentwood Bound has caused problems for our municipality now as a result of their changes. So is there a return on investment here? Is there a limited return on investment?
Well, from a process standpoint, if you look at all of the CIPs, the project examples, the recommendations on there, none of the intent there is to move a problem downstream. That's just not how I operate, especially with channel stabilization. Channel stabilization is one of those things where you have a really bad potential to move a problem to another location. Typically, historically, you would do a Band-Aid approach. We see some erosion right here, we're going to fix a problem right here without really looking systemically about what's going on in the watershed. When you have a CIP program like this, you take that holistic view. So when we make those recommendations on what to do from a channel stabilization standpoint, we're recommending a project here. It's to stabilize this area because you have problems along the bank, but it also addresses systemic stability, typically through grade controlling the channel. So we always want to lock in those reaches so that we're not propagating any issues upstream or downstream. We're having that fix cause a reaction in a neighboring area.
Yeah.
Similar process with your stormwater improvements as well, like your enclosed systems.
Absolutely. So one thing that, these are the current issues. Is there anything in this master plan that looks at future potential issues for us to at least decrease the potential ramifications of those future issues or to stabilize them now?
Yes. So by and large, your channel ones address that, because when you address systemic issues in the channel, I think in terms of systemic grade controls have the best return on investment. If you're able to go in and lock in a channel before it has a chance to incise and degrade, you prevent a ton of issues down the road. So a grade control, for example, is typically a rock structure, 10, 20 feet wide, width of the channel. If you're in a headwater system, even a moderate lower system, and you talk about, let's say we're having a new development go in. That's the point where you want to grade control that channel, because 10 grand in rock at that point, before the channel has a chance to incise, think in terms of the future investment. 10 years down the road, all that water's come in, channel has dropped down 10, 15 feet. How much does it cost to stabilize that bank then? You're talking $1,000 a foot per bank.
Yeah.
10 grand up front, $1,000 a foot down the road. That's where your return on investment. So you're looking at that long-term life cycle.
Absolutely. One thing, like the two major complaints I get from residents, it seems like, deal with an MSD issue, related issue.
Yes.
Or the diversion of water from a neighboring property. And it's not a natural diversion of water from a neighboring property. it's a man-made diversion. And so are there any, and I'm not sure if this was part of your scope here, but would you recommend any changes in our policies in regards to, for instance, stormwater capability on, when doing an addition or anything like that, that you would recommend in order to alleviate or to decrease the amount of potential flooding caused by neighboring properties?
So there's a lot of thoughts on that one. So if you have new development, it's a lot easier to catch in planning. Because the older thing, we're gonna have drainage swales along the backyards. Well, what happens 5 years down the road? People put fences up. Fences are blocking those drainage swales now, and now you're diverting water all through people's backyards. All sorts of issues that way. There's better ways to approach that, either through covenants. Okay, you can only have open slotted fences, the chain link, vertical pickets, no solid privacy fences. That's one approach. Another approach is actually just to flip that whole scenario and have everything drained out to the streets. So you have enclosed collection systems on the streets, no swales through backyards, just from a programmatic standpoint. Now, when you're dealing with redevelopment, so additions, things like that, absolutely, you should be, from a plan review standpoint, looking at those potential issues. One of the things MSD has right now, they've got that green infrastructure grant program. So small residents like that can go in and get help putting in like a rain garden or amended soil to help offset that imperviousness that's added by the addition to help mitigate some of that additional runoff. Additional ways to do that, again, from a planning standpoint, if you're putting in a new addition to the house, another 1,000 square feet on the house, great addition, beautiful, love it. Take those downspouts and actually kick them out to the street in a pop-up emitter so that it drains out to the front yards, out into the curb and gutter, into the enclosed system. So you're eliminating that nuisance issue from even forming in the backyards.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. This was very helpful.
Right, other questions?
I just had a question about like how, like the tool, going forward. So when you say, you'll add new issues to it, like, I'm assuming this will be managed by Public Works. Like, are you giving them a way to do that? Is that done through an existing system like Magnet? Like, how do we add things and how does this work long term?
It's beautiful. Right? I mean, we're engineers. We love our spreadsheets.
Right.
So the prioritization tools, the cost estimating worksheets, those are in spreadsheets right now.
Okay.
And it's all a nice linked database. So that we come in, we add a new project. It's actually linked to a template that has all of the, from a cost standpoint, here's the different types of construction elements. Here's rock, closed systems, and you can put weighted values for your dollars. So right now, everything's based on 2024 dollars. At any point in time, Sanan can come in and take that base worksheet that has all of those unit costs and say, hey, well, I've got MSD's 2027 unit rate database, so I'm just going to go update those numbers. Boom. Just like that, you've got an updated CIP budget because we have now instantly updated all of those unit costs for all of those programs, all of those projects, and you can get a instantaneous update on what the capital program is 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And all you're doing in the meantime, the new project comes up, is you're adding another tab in there. The other side of that is all of this is in GIS. So all of the problem areas are geospatially located, and that's in shapefiles that will be given to the city. So when we laid out all the projects, we did all of that in GIS intentionally so that it's easy to see them. You can see all of the proposed improvements, with the bank stabilization. It's a very handy tool that shows you the exact limits. Very easy for communicating with residents. At the end of the day, each of these are put together on a one-page write-up. It has a nice problem description up the top, typically a little photo, solution description, cost information, any type of environmental concerns you would want to coordinate on, like, hey, this project's in a floodplain, we'll need to have a no-rise certification, or, hey, there's a wetland near here, we'll need to make sure we coordinate with the Corps on that. And then there'll be an exhibit at the bottom that has everything drawn up. Very easy to replicate. We have the templates for that that are called MXD files for working in ArcView that we're gonna give to the city. So if there's a new problem area, they can scan over in GIS, sketch in the new project, fill in the information in the spreadsheet, and create a new one-page write-up template. So very easy to update and implement long-term if you're only adding a couple of projects each year. So there's not a massive update effort each year. It's very easy to go in and add those in. And again, then you're re-ranking the program instantaneously, push of the button. And you've got that, well, here's where our highest and best use is. Same thing on the prioritization worksheet. We have worksheets set up for every project throughout the CIP program, all 86 of them. And then there is a template that all of those are linked to. So that if we come down 5 years down the road and say, you know what, that scoring really just isn't quite working. We need to tweak this number over here a little bit. We can do that. And all of them are updated instantly. So you've got that robust, responsive tool. Again, it's that decision-making tool to help support the city. Try to make this as flexible as possible to be as useful as possible. It's not intended to be a static document.
I have a couple questions. Are you,
I was just gonna ask, like, for those future projects, would we have a way for residents to say, can you have this project? Like, would we need some kind of process to get that kind of vetted and added to the documents?
So we would, and I don't wanna supersede your
Go ahead.
questions, but mine kind of tie into that. Did I understand that there was still a large quantity that needed to be reviewed?
There is, so if we think back to the slideshow way back at the beginning, we had 198 and there was 499-ish. We're dialing those down because we know a lot of those were yard flooding, typically less than 6 inches. We're going to leave those on the list, but we're not going to go reevaluate them at this point. So those will be identified, they're in the GIS, but we're not going to do a site visit and develop a CIP because it's not cost effective for the city right now. Those are going to be so far down on the list, it's not worth looking at.
I appreciate that. Part of what I'm doing the budget in my mind, so knowing
Right.
that there's 200-ish more to be included. I won't make you commit to it, but it's
Okay.
fair that there could be double, instead of looking at 48 million and
Very good.
be 100
It could
million.
be $100 million program, yes.
So that you said something very interesting, that other cities have a discerning criteria.
Yes.
I would be really interested in learning more about that, perhaps not tonight, but I imagine that would drive that 100 million down considerably if we had some, not only prioritization, but yes, this is a city issue, no, it's not.
Yes, and at the end of the day, you can implement that at any time. It doesn't have to be for this plan. If you wanted to just get them ranked and see where you're at, we can do that. We can flip that button fairly easily and take those on or off the list.
I don't know that I want to do that. I'm curious knowing what that criteria is and how we would.
Got several examples,
Okay, great.
so we can talk about that ad nauseum whenever you're ready.
Well, you made that sound fun. So yes, that gets to your question, that if residents, we would have to work out a mechanism, excuse me, for residents to be able to identify, and then for us to evaluate and see if it truly should be placed on the list.
Most of the time, you just have the residents still call into Public Works and they would register their complaint that way, and then Public Works would follow up and make that in-field determination if it was a public or private concern, and then be able to move forward with putting it on the list, doing the follow-up documentation.
I have just two questions. So is phase 3 complete? Is there phase 4 identified?
So right now, we got all the way through phase 3 for the original problems that we were able to get out of the survey. So right now, we're going to go back through phase 3 one more time with those additional sites, because we were able to finally get some of that additional survey information out of the software. Took a little bit of finagling, a little bit of coaxing. All that means is we're just on a little bit more of a little delay on the schedule. What it
Okay.
boils down to. We're going to add that information in and then re-rank the tables that are in the implementation section of the report.
So all of these issues that have been categorized, each project has those identified, like, is it a threatened roadway? Does it?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
and then the other question is, and this is more of a finance related thing, would we have a separate stormwater CIP in addition to our regular? Or
Public
do we
Works,
have?
I think.
At 100 million, I think we'd have to discuss it. Yeah.
Okay,
Please don't
And-
jump
and
to
would it be-
100.
and I guess that would be the question, would we make this, the CIP as large as it needed to be? You know, are we gonna put everything in there, or would we make it 50 million for a while and then maybe keep adding more to keep it at 50 million?
Depends on how long, how many
I
years.
think there's a
the
lot
plan
of
is.
factors that go into that, and not to jump to this evening's work session. They're great questions, this evening's work session, but I think that also fits into the prioritization, not only of the goals, but what are our budgetary prioritization.
Okay,
So I assume that once we get the final report, we're gonna do all of this again and probably have to make some decisions along the lines that you're talking about.
I have one question just in relation to climate change and not knowing, you know, we have the numbers of, you know, average rainfall right now, but we all know that that's increasing every year. What does it look like, you know, long-term for these longer term projects to adjust?
So from a resiliency standpoint, I think the industry right now is actually trending more from a static design storm to a risk-based assessment. Corps has been using that for years, and it's a really good technique to use. I think you're going to see MSD as the local kind of leader on the design criteria, switching to that in the future. I haven't seen anything come out that they're looking at that now, but they do, when you do designs for them, they tend to ask about that. So they're like an enclosed system. Typically, you would do a 15-year design storm is what the conveyance capacity would be for. Now we look at 15-year is the design capacity, but let's make sure that the 100-year is either contained within below the ground level, or that we have an identified overland flow path for it to go through. That becomes part of a design problem with the projects themselves. Most of the ones that we're talking about on this are street flooding issues. So you're adding additional culverts. And the conveyance mechanism, if it's in a street, is to continue down the street. If it gets surcharged at one inlet and you look downstream and it continues. Typically, at that point, you're looking for positive overflow routes to a creek if the street system is overflowed. And that's probably a little bit beyond this type of study, looking for those individual components. But that's something that could be done in the future. Your big problem areas you pretty much already know about now, because you can look at that data and say, where are my flooding issues? Those are typically along the channels and through those adjacent yards. We know those are the problem areas. So as part of a design process, what can we do to add additional freeboard from a design standpoint? That comes into play a lot more on new development and redevelopment. So if we're redeveloping a house and it's in the floodplain, maybe we shouldn't redevelop the house in the floodplain, or when it's redeveloped, require it to have floodproofing 2 feet above the 100-year elevation. So it comes into more of a programmatic standpoint from planning and zoning.
Can I follow up on that? Because it seems like so often it's like we're a dog chasing its own tail with global warming and especially stormwater management and flooding issues. So, I mean, how do we plan for, I mean, effectively an unknown here? And it seems like our flooding issues, and maybe it's just because we just know of them more, but it just seems like they've gotten progressively worse. And I don't know if that's a symptom of MSD or a combination of MSD and global warming. And so it's like, it just seems very difficult to keep up. And it just seems like when we talk about potentially 50 to 100 million, it seems like, well, that's never going to end. It's just going to be like, we're going to have a new program on top of a new project. So does that make sense?
Yes, and I can tell you the answer is no. I went through this with Maryland Heights, one of the early ones that we did, started back in 99, 2000, got their CIP going. They actually finished their CIP program in 2020.
Oh, awesome.
The last project. They haven't had any major channel issues, haven't had any major channel stabilization issues. Mostly what they've been dealing with at this point are street improvements and addressing the enclosed systems, making improvements for, hey, this storm system was originally designed for a 5-year or a 15-year. Let's go ahead and upsize it while we're doing these roadway improvements. So that becomes the trend long term, is you're upsizing those pipes and more of your street infrastructure.
Gotcha.
Once you stabilize the channels, you're really not having to deal with those again.
Understood. Thank you very much.
And to your second point about the risk and reliability factors, think in terms from a planning standpoint, what's the risk of exceedance? So there's always going to be a bigger storm. There's just no doubt about it. Can the system handle it? And if not, where does the water go? From a planning standpoint, make your developers show those overland flow routes. They already have to do that with MSD. And it's been a more recent requirement. One of the things they do now is a blocked condition. Any pipe size 36 inches or smaller on their conveyance system, they block that and then run a 100-year event through the valley.
Oh, wow.
So what is getting flooded at that point? If all of that enclosed system, 36-inch pipes and smaller, is blocked, water can't get into it, how easy is that?
Yeah.
You get a curb inlet or something like that gets blocked. Where does the water pond up and go? Having those type of resource maps becomes very important. And that's something I know FEMA is starting to do as far as their flood update maps. So you'll see that with the new risk maps that are coming out, you'll see a trend more towards pluvial flooding issues. So identifying those areas that are in enclosed network areas outside of your channel and your typical floodplain limits that also have potential for 100-year flooding issues.
Interesting.
What was that term?
Pluvial, Pluvial.
Sorry.
I just kind of a practical question. I assume everything's in there like the Elm Culvert, which isn't that still on? Don't we still have grant funding in the pipeline? So I'm grasping at, is it really all this money? So anything that's already been in the planning process, is that included in there or not included in there?
I would have to go back, look through
Okay.
for specific locations. If they are, it's fairly easy to drop those off the list.
Again, I'm grasping at straws.
We have 2 big culvert projects.
We do have
Yeah.
2 large culvert.
The big scary numbers, one thing. When I think about that, I think of it in terms of it's a management. It's more of a how long are we going to take to address the problems?
Right.
It's not a 5-year CIP. It may be a 50-year CIP.
Right.
And along the way, we just have a really good tool for adding additional problems as they come up. And then we can always keep in mind what are the best and highest value for the residents.
Well, and it's great to hear that Maryland Heights took 20+ years to complete that. And so it just gives us an idea that this isn't going to be done overnight. It's going to take a long, drawn out process potentially. So I was just going to ask you, what are conservation easements?
Conservation easements are a way of dedicating natural space. So if a resident's wanting to do an addition, so instead of say having a fire retention basin in their backyard, maybe they have a very lovely 50, 60-foot wide natural buffer up against the channel. If you can put that into a conservation easement, that provides all sorts of healthy benefits for the channel, as well as providing a buffer from an erosion standpoint before it gets to the houses. So you're locking that area up so that it can't be developed in the future.
Interesting.
We like to include those on the list. They're not always very high because most of the time you're not going to know those from a planning standpoint unless you've had some discussions with the property owner. But it's a good way if you start getting into some of those preliminary assessments to add some additional points.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's a great idea.
It is.
So it's like major concerns.
Yes, absolutely.
It's
Right.
rain gardens, basically, right?
Not rain gardens, stream buffer.
What's the,
The riparian corridor, so all the trees that are along
Yeah.
the channel, all of that nice, lovely underbrush that looks wild and scenic. Making sure that that stuff can't be torn down.
Yeah.
Provides a lot of benefit to the channel because it slows the water down before it gets into the channel. Helps absorb some of those nutrients and pollutants that are in the waterways. As well as it provides you that buffer if the channel is reacting before you have a chance to come in and stabilize. It gives it that space before it has a chance to threaten the structure.
thanks.
All right, we're gonna give Marie here the last question since she's been waiting patiently.
Well, I'm gonna ask mine but he's
Oh,
not
I'm
asking
sorry.
questions.
Was there another, did you have one? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that you did. Please go right ahead and then we'll go on to Karen.
So you mentioned the 2002, our initial stormwater plan, and it predates me. I'm not sure if it was our first stormwater plan, but regardless, and this may be more of a Sinan question, how did we do meeting the 2002 stormwater plan? Did we fulfill those projects?
Most of the projects that I saw off of that list, it was about 50-50.
Okay.
So there were still some that were not addressed from that list, and those got rolled in as part of the assessments for these.
Okay. Just asking that just in terms of lessons learned, and obviously as Councilman Franklin was saying, this wouldn't be overnight. It could be a 20-year plan. How often should we be updating the full plan, doing this sort of assessment?
Well, the beautiful way we set this up is that you can continuously update it because you're adding additional projects. So you're just constantly doing that 5-year window. So each year, if new projects are getting on, you add them into the list and then re-rank, and you can cast out for the next 5 years.
It's really just a series of re-ranking.
It's a series of re-ranking. There's not really a need to go back and restudy the watershed because the residents are going to report the issues that they know of when they come in. And we've walked all the major channels, so there's not really going to be any surprises there.
So as we identify these things that need to be done, and then we have to identify funding sources and what have you, are these things done in conjunction with things that MSD is doing in the area to manage?
They can be. That's the benefit of having them done with the same prioritization methodology as MSD. Because if MSD is coming into a problem area and say, hey, we're going to replace this section of enclosed systems. The city can go, well, that was pretty high on our list. Why don't we kick in some of our dollars? And suddenly MSD's number, where it may be 30th on their list from a cost benefit standpoint, if you're kicking in construction dollars, that reduces what they're putting in, which drives up that cost benefit score and floats it higher in the list.
I was kind of hoping you would be the one kicking in.
I'm going to.
All right.
I do have one more question.
Happy to.
Is it possible that some of these projects would affect residents' private property, and could they ever just say, no, we don't want you to do that?
Absolutely.
Does it happen?
Yes.
Okay. Just curious.
And what happens is that project gets a note in the file that the resident was not willing to grant any easements for the project, and it moves off the list.
Okay, that's what I was just curious about, yeah.
Floats down. Now, sometimes if the resident moves and you get a new resident that makes the complaints, you can come in there and say, oh, hey, yeah, we've got a history here that there were complaints, but the previous owners were not willing to grant easements. You are, oh, well, we can put you back on the list now. Whoop. Reactivate.
We wouldn't put too much planning into that before a resident was.
Typically, what you would do from that perspective, you can do a pre-planning assessment.
Okay.
That can be by a consultant like me coming in, like, hey, we've got these CIPs. Let's do an assessment study. So right out of the gate, we're just going to go check with the residents and verify that the problem's still there and that they're willing to grant easements to support the project. Because from a public standpoint, we don't want to be paying for easements. You're spending taxpayer dollars to benefit the residents. Most of the time, cities I see doing these ask for donations on the easements. It's just kind of right out of the gate. If you can't get those, it moves down the road.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, thank you for your time. We're going to go over here and spend money on these guys that want us here and willing to donate the easements.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I tried to do it too soon. Does anybody else have anything? I apologize for that, by the way. Okay. Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate this, and we
Yes,
look
thank
forward
you.
to seeing you again. I think we probably will.
Yes.
Before we finish our work session, we had our two interviewees, Randy Jerlingus for Old Webster Special Business District, John Lewis for Crossroads Special Business District. By the way, we did follow the process so that the liaison, both staff liaison chair and council liaison had these in advance. Is there any objection to appointing both of these gentlemen?
Objection.
All right. Then we will move. We'll take 5 minutes to get ourselves to the other room and get started over there.
All right.
Welcome to the September 17th meeting of the Webster Groves City Council. We welcome your questions, ideas, comments, and you can make them for a 3-minute period when we call on you during the remarks from community and visitors. We ask that you fill out a card like this, which is available on the table just inside the doorway there, so we know who you are. Again, you're limited to 3 minutes, and if you are on Zoom and would like to make a public comment, we will ask you to use the raise your hand function at that time. All right, let's start with a call of the roll.
Oh. One moment,
I did that too quickly, huh?
already. Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss. Here. Councilmember Franklin,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander,
Here.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd. Here. Councilmember Hasselmeyer.
Here.
All right, we've got some proclamations, but we also have one recognition that we'll do before. I'm going to ask Councilmember Franklin and Councilmember Bliss to grab those two things for me. Come down here. I guess I could have picked one up myself, but All right, we told you that we'd do this twice. So we are very fortunate for this month to have with us some Wyseele Fellows. It's a program from Washington, D.C. I believe it's the State Department. Am I correct? And so we have some young professionals with us who are going to help with our sustainability programs and also try and learn from us a few things to take back to their governments. And so I'm going to call on Katie Chanvipa. I don't know if I'm not even close on that, and Lydia Nuant. And so Katie is from Laos and Lydia is from Myanmar. And they're here. No, you're coming up here. You think you're staying there? There's no way that's happening. And so we just have a little welcome gift for each of you.
That's really surprised.
Wait, the rest of the council has to be in the picture. We can't just have 3 of us in the picture. We've got to have the whole council come down.
Yeah, Dr. People, you should be. in
Yeah,
this
you
too.
should be too.
Yeah.
Going up. Why, it's shorter. All right. We're so happy to have you all here. Absolutely. All right, and I am going to invite Chief Aceves forward, please. We're going to move on to our proclamations. This, I believe, is the second year that we have proclaimed Hispanic Heritage Month. And we do have a proclamation, but I did want to introduce, or actually you asked for this moment, and I really am glad that you did. So we will let you share a little bit, and then I will continue with the proclamation, but I'm going to get out of the way so that you can look to the audience, look to council. That's going to be your choice.
I love it. Buenas noches. Buenas noches a todos. Gracias y bienvenidos. Yo soy Vicente Aceves, la primer jefe de la policía in Webster Groves. And what I just said, if you don't speak Spanish, was that I'm Vince Aceves, and I'm the first Mexican chief of police in Webster Groves. Thank you. I've been here for 3 months, and I've enjoyed every bit of this journey, and I'm very proud of my Mexican roots, and I'm honored, extremely honored to be standing before you today representing Hispanics throughout the world and throughout the United States. My family worked really hard. I was born and I lived for my first 6 years in a housing project in the south side of Chicago. So I've been on a journey, and to find myself in this position, in this wonderful community, I couldn't be more honored, and I feel great, and my family's proud of me. And I'm proud to be standing before you today.
As you can see, my Spanish is not on point. I've lost a lot of it over time. But that doesn't make me any less Mexican. And I'm proud to be here. And I thank you all for allowing me to come up here this evening. I'm going to read the first part of the proclamation in Espanol. So I was working on this all day. When I was talking to the city manager, I was getting all these tasks, but I was like, I have to translate this. And I didn't want to do it on Google. So I enlisted the help of my wife. So for those of you who don't know me, my wife was born in Mexico. She was born on the ranch, and she came here when she was 5. And she stood in line with her mother and her 3 siblings, and she got her papers, and she's a citizen, and she was a police officer, and she's the American dream. I always tell people she's the American dream. So couldn't be prouder to be here. So I'll start off this proclamation with the first paragraph. Thank you for your patience. Considerando que el más de la herencia hispana es una oportunidad para celebrar la cultura, la historia y contribuciones de los ciudadanos hispanoamericanos, y destaca los innumerables logros y contribuciones. That's the first paragraph.
And I get to do the translation because I really am a single language person, unfortunately. Whereas Hispanic Heritage Month is an opportunity to celebrate the culture, history, and contributions of Hispanic American citizen, and highlights the countless achievements and contributions, which is what we just heard. And whereas the observation began in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Lyndon Johnson, this was observed annually until 1988, when it was expanded by President Ronald Reagan to the period of September 15th through October 15th, and became National Hispanic Heritage Month, and has been celebrated annually since then. And whereas more than 60 million Americans of Hispanic origin today contribute to our national diversity, enriching the quality of American life with centuries-old traditions that reflect the multi-ethnic and multicultural customs of their communities, while adding their own distinct and dynamic perspectives to the story of our country. And whereas this observance affords special opportunities to become more knowledgeable about Hispanic heritage, and to honor the many Hispanic Americans who represent a significant and fast-growing demographic in Missouri and the St. Louis region. And we honor the invaluable ways they contribute to our country. Now, therefore, I, Laura Arnold, Mayor of the City of Webster Groves, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the month beginning September 15th and ending October 15th as National Hispanic Heritage Month, and urge all citizens to join us in celebrating the great contributions of Hispanic Americans to our city, state, and nation. Oh, we got to come out of the way with that microphone and. Not scared. I'm doing my best.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, we have 2 more proclamations. We're doing lots of ceremonial stuff tonight. The next proclamation is for Suicide Prevention Month, and it reads, whereas September is known globally as Suicide Prevention Month, and the proclamation was created to raise the visibility of mental health resources and suicide prevention services available in our community. The goal is to start the conversation about mental health and the impact of suicide, to help destigmatize the conversation and help connect people with the appropriate support services. And whereas, according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, suicide is the second leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 10 and 34 in the United States. And each and every suicide directly impacts additional people, including family, friends, coworkers, neighbors, and community members. Whereas the City of Webster Groves publicly places its full support behind those who work in the fields of mental health, education, and law enforcement, and whereas global organizations and our local mental health organizations serve on the front lines of a war that many still refuse to discuss, as stigma regarding suicide and mental health issues is far too prevalent. And whereas the city encourages all residents to take the time to understand the importance of mental health education and recognize that taking care of ourselves and others includes taking care of mental health. Now therefore, I, Laura Arnold, Mayor of the City of Webster Groves, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2024 as Suicide Prevention Month in the City of Webster Groves. All right. And the last proclamation we have is for Constitution Day, and this one is actually mandated by the federal government. So any institution in the United States that receives federal dollars must recognize Constitution Day. Little fun fact, Senator Robert Byrd, this was his thing. He wanted this to happen. So I'm not going to read the whole proclamation here. I'm just going to say, now therefore, I, Laura Arnold, Mayor of the City of Webster Groves, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves, which is especially important in a presidential election year. All right, so look at that. We are now going to continue on to our public hearing. And the public hearing is for our Community Development Block Grant, and it's resolution 2024-55, which authorizes the city manager of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri, to submit on behalf of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri, an application for community development funds for fiscal years 2025 through 2028 to St. Louis County Office of Community Development, Department of Human Services, providing for specific programs to be undertaken within said city under the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended. And we have our Director of Parks and Recreation, Scott Davis, here. Please, the floor is yours.
Good evening. I come with free money again. Your favorite thing.
We always like that.
This public hearing is for a community development block grant, national program administered by U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Just started a sign-in sheet. So if any folks here that are non-city staff would please fill that out. We'll need to submit that with our application. We'll also I already wrote down the online guest that we have. CDBG funding seeks to meet one of three national objectives: one, to benefit low and moderate income persons; two, to prevent or eliminate slums or blight; or three, address community development needs with particular urgency because existing conditions pose a serious and immediate threat to the health and welfare of the community. HUD provides this block of grants to St. Louis County, who then disperses most of their funding through subrecipients, municipalities, and nonprofits and such. We've been receiving this grant from HUD for many years. Tonight's just the first step in this hearing of the application process for calendar year 2024. We're applying for and expect to receive the same amount of funding that we always have, although county has changed their funding matrix. So typically in previous years, we've always gotten $33,300 per year. County last year switched that, and they're giving blocks of communities their funding for a 3-year time frame. So this year we're eligible for $99,900, but we won't get funding again until 2028. For most of the last several years, council has chosen to use these CDBG funds for the home improvement program. That is the cornerstone program of the CDBG. It provides for 5-year forgivable home loans to income qualified residents that live anywhere in the city limits of Webster Groves. This portion of the program is administered through St. Louis County's Office of Community Development, and individuals apply directly to them. I contacted county a couple weeks ago, and we currently have 9 residents that are on the waiting list, and we have multiple applications that are in process that have already been funded through previous funding sources and are working through that improvement to their house with the funding available. In addition to the home loan program, there are several other options that the money could go to. Improvements for infrastructure needs like sidewalks or parks, ADA improvements anywhere throughout the city, again, sidewalks or improvements to City Hall. I know that's something that you guys have talked about. You can use it for clearance activities, for clearance, demolition, and removal of buildings. Those are kind of the things that we can kind of use them for. In line with the council's previous allocations, it's staff's recommendation that for calendar years 2024 to 2027, funds be directed to the home improvement program. That's my presentation. I'll leave it in your all's capable hands and also answer any questions if you have.
Anyone have questions?
So basically, we have used it solely for the home improvement plan.
For the last probably 4 to 5 years. Previous to that, we used it a lot in Ivory Crockett Park. We applied about half of the money each year to improvements in Ivory Crockett Park. County changed their map a couple years ago, about 5 years ago, and we all knew that it was wrong, and it excluded Ivory Crockett Park out of that the low to moderate income map of the county. And so at that point, council put it all towards the home improvement loan, and even though they fixed their map the next year, council has chosen to keep it in that home improvement loan for the last 4 to 5 years.
And like target seniors, focus on seniors for this or just the LMI population that uses the fund?
Yes, it's anybody LMI that applies, and they apply directly through county. So we don't really, we publicize it, but the city doesn't really do anything with it. They do all the applications go through county. County determines eligibility, and it's on a first come, first served basis once they meet the application guidelines.
And based on whether or not people
It is a one-time loan. Yes. So I believe it's a $5,000 loan, and it's only one time. Once you get it, you can't get it again.
Are there other questions? I do not have any cards for public comment, and I don't see any hands raised. So I'm going to assume there aren't any public comments for this hearing, and I will ask the city attorney to enter the items into the record.
I would move to enter the comments of Mr. Davis into the record tonight, and all the information is provided to council this evening.
Right, thank you. Now, given that this is a resolution, we can go ahead and adopt it today, right? So we will then go ahead, I'll close the public hearing right now, and I will ask then Councilmember Hassemeyer if you could call for the adoption of Resolution 2024-55.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call for the
Adoption.
adoption of
Resolution.
Resolution 2024-55.
for the adoption of resolution 2024-55.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? All right, I believe we can go ahead and have that vote then.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hassemeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes. And just so you know, I think we've all had that experience at one point or another. All right, we now move to our remarks from community and visitors. I have one card, and that is from Mr. Dave Buck.
Dave Buck, Colonial Village Apartment number C. Three things I'd like to share. All three of them are somewhat very personal to me. The first one is, again, I appreciate very much the fact that on September 25th next week, we're going to talk about the indoor pool. I'm a strong advocate for it. I want to be very clear. Our 100% of our focus is on revenue. We're not going to be talking about operating expenses. It's about revenue. What's interesting is that the city of Webster Groves has 77 revenue streams, but the big one is sales tax. It's about a third of the revenue. We figure there's about 14 different revenue streams at the indoor pool, and I think you're going to be surprised when you see the revenue projections that we're going to share with you on September 25th. Second, is that I have been going through, walking through the Northwest Webster neighborhood for Porch Fest. That's on Foot, Lee, and Bacon. It's right across the street from KBC. I'm getting an earful on the KBC controversy, as you can imagine. And you can see both sides, because I also have a daughter that's a nurse at Children's Hospital. And so she knows what's going on there from the standpoint of moving the mental facility out to KBC. On the other hand, the neighbors are very intense and they're passionate about protecting their family and the fear that they experience in potentially having mental patients cross over the street into their yards, affect their kids and stuff like that. My point is that I think some of you know, and I know one of you really knows, that peacemaking is really important to me. In the 24 years I've lived in Webster, there have been a number of controversies from the Mills Project all the way up to Douglas Hill. And there are massive controversies, divisions. It gets ugly, it gets mean. And in any battle between two sides, there's only 5 potential outcomes: win, lose, lose, win, lose, lose, a tie, draw, or win-win. And here in Webster, we don't do win-win very well, in my opinion. And I think we have the opportunity here. I mean, they're already running full-page ads. This is just like Douglas Hill again. And the controversy and the division is happening all over again. Can we do something different? Can we lead this process, the peace process, by bringing together both sides at a common table to try to reach the common good? And I think it's possible.
All right, thank you very much, Dave.
Yeah.
Well, we have our Webster Kirkwood Times reporter and a former council member. If either of you have a public comment to make now, you need to raise your hand. All right, we will conclude then our public comments. Does anyone have any new business that they would like to bring to our attention this evening? All right, Councilmember Alexander, would you call for the third reading of Bill number 9261, please?
Reading of Bill number 9261 and its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Bill 9261, third and final reading. An ordinance providing for the submission to the qualified voters of the city of Webster Groves of an amendment to the charter of the city, which should be submitted to the electors at the general municipal election on April the 8th, 2025, and proposing adding Article 16.
Is there any discussion?
I think this is a really important concept and a really important ideal and a really important value. And I believe it's just that, an ideal and a value. I don't think it belongs in our charter. And I think, in my opinion, the word shall anchor institutions. There's a lot of, the scope of this is very broad. And I think that we can set ourselves up for potential ramifications that we aren't necessarily anticipating. So I do not think, in my mind, I'm not in favor of this. I understand the purpose of it. I'm on board for us doing it. I just don't believe it belongs in the charter.
All right, is there additional discussion? All right, let's have the vote then, please.
Yes. Councilmember Franklin,
No.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
All right, Councilmember Franklin, could you call for the third reading of Bill number 9266?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to call for the third and final reading of Bill number 9266 and subsequent adoptions.
Bill 9266, third reading. An ordinance levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2024 by the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, and repealing ordinance 9233.
I think I'm supposed to do it this way as well. I'd like to call, and maybe the best way is for me to remove that motion.
We need to pass the amended
Yeah, I
version.
need to do the amended.
Oh, I'm sorry. So at this point, then there would be a motion to amend
All right.
what you have here, and then we would vote on the amended version.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to call for an amendment to my motion, and I move to approve the final tax rate numbers as redlined in Bill number 9266 as referenced on said bill as amended on September 17th, 2024.
Second. Wait, sorry.
So now this vote would be on the amendment, and then we would take a final vote on the
All right,
bill.
is there discussion of the amendment? These are the numbers they give us. All right, let's have the vote on the amendment, please.
Yes. Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
All right, we now have Bill number 9266 as amended. Is there any discussion? All right, we'll have that vote then, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
All right, let's do that all again for the library now.
The opposite way, which would be, I would like to call for a motion to approve the final tax rate of the numbers as redlined in bill number 92677 and referenced on said bill as amended September 17th, 2024.
So now we would have a second on that motion, vote on the amendment and do the same thing.
Right, we've got the second. Is there a discussion of the amendment? Let's have the vote.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
No, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call for the third and final reading of bill number 9267 as amended and its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Is there discussion? All right, let's have that vote. Thank you, Dave.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
All right, Councilmember Bliss, could you call for the third reading of bill number 9268, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the third reading of bill number 9268 and its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Bill 9268, third and final reading without amendments. An ordinance amending the Code of Webster Groves, Chapter 10, Article 12, Parks, Section 10.1200, locations by adding a new park, Oxford Bend Park.
All right, is there discussion? Yay, new park, especially when somebody else pays for a lot of it. All right, let's have that vote then, please.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to new business. As we noted in the work session, the indoor water park discussion will be postponed until October 1st, so that a few conversations can happen before we as council make any decisions. We'll move to number 2, which is the draft housing impact policy. That was part of our packet. And we have our planning director, Robert Myers, is here. There's no formal presentation since we all saw this memo. And so I think you're here mostly for questions, or is there anything you wanted to tell us about the proposal as we kick off?
I can either provide a presentation, verbal presentation, comments, or I can take questions, whatever your preference is.
So Mayor, what I had asked Mr. Myers to do is just give a very brief overview
Perfect.
of the memo and then to
Perfect.
see where the questions land.
That sounds great. Please proceed.
Okay. Obviously, we're undergoing the comprehensive plan process right now, and one of the initial recommendations, preliminary recommendations, is to discourage tear downs. So this issue has been raised in the community, and the memo that I provided is intended to address one concept for how to address the tear down phenomenon, which is taking place not just in Webster Groves, but in jurisdictions across the country. Not uniformly, but in specific metropolitan areas and in specific jurisdictions. In the memo that I provided, I have a definition for the tear down phenomenon. But what I've been asked to do is provide a review of potential solution, which would be a housing impact fee policy, and housing impact fee fund. The memo that I provided has a fair amount of legal overview or background. I'm not intended to provide legal advice, but I did want to raise some issues that I think should be considered as part of crafting a housing impact fee and housing impact fee program, if that's what the council wants to do, because I believe that has to be very carefully crafted in order to meet a number of legal considerations. But again, I would leave that to people like Neil and others who are much better than I am in that realm. Generally speaking, I'll move down to what a draft housing impact fee could look like. Just for discussion purposes, And as a placeholder or starting place, the idea would be that as smaller affordable homes are lost in the community and replaced with larger, more expensive homes, one idea would be to impose a fee on the new home, and I'll get to that just in a moment, how that might take place, and to use that money in ways to set aside the impacts or offset the impacts of that in our community. Now, there's not been any decision. Obviously, we're just the beginning discussion stages of how that money could be used, but let me just throw out a couple of ideas. One might be, for instance, to assist with the costs for development for an attainable housing project, or for qualified renters, applicants who are needing assistance. Another idea might be down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. I mean, these are just, again, ideas. In the memo, the starting point for discussion is a 2.5% fee on the value of newly built residences greater than 2,500 square feet in size, which replace houses less than 2,500 square feet in size, and a 5% fee on the value of newly built residences greater than 5,000 square feet. Those specifics are in there just because there has to be some sort of trigger. There has to be some sort of uniform standard about how this might be applied if it's to really be in order to move forward. Some of the considerations I think that are important is the timing of when the fee will be imposed. I'll give an example. One is, would this impact fee be imposed at the time of demolition? My feeling is there's some problems with that. I'll give you one example. Someone is a low-income homeowner. Their home is in really bad condition. They can either fix it up or tear it down. If they need to tear it down, are we now going to impose a fee on a low-income homeowner who's trying to address their housing situation? That's one consideration. Another idea would be impose an impact fee at the time of a building permit. And that could be potentially added to as part of a building impact. I'm sorry, a building permit fee. The third consideration is, could it be imposed at the time of a transfer of the property? And as I mentioned in the memo, we want to carefully consider whether or not that would run afoul of Missouri's constitutional amendment that does not allow real estate transfer taxes within Missouri. So these are all considerations that I hope people would think about. And should the council decide to move forward, staff would really need to work with the city attorney, develop administrative processes, and obviously also the city's finance team to develop programs and policies that would have a clear, predictable program with programs that are in line with what you all are thinking.
All right, questions, comments?
Do we have any neighboring communities that have something like this that's working for them already?
Not that I'm aware of. So in my review of impact fees in Missouri, there are a number of jurisdictions that do have impact fees, and they're all related to impacts for development that are demanded by the new development. I'll give you an example: arterial road impact fee, sanitary sewage treatment plant expansion impact fee. St. Louis County has a fee that they relate to transportation improvements. I'm not aware of any Missouri communities that have an impact fee specifically for housing. That doesn't mean that they don't exist, but I'm not able to find any here in Missouri.
Could we, one of, not only is affordable housing one of our goals, but sustainability, could we change it from square feet to impervious surfaces? So for instance, if I tear down a 2,000 square foot house and only build 1,000 square foot, but make everything else concrete, and causing a lot of sustainability issues. So do you think there's an avenue to rather than just taxing on the square footage, taxing on the impervious surfaces.
It's an interesting idea, although I think it's trying to solve a different problem.
Yeah.
I think the housing impact fee idea is specifically to address the idea that what is commonly called the tear down phenomenon.
Yeah.
And that's the loss of really, there's a couple effects for the tear down phenomenon. One is the loss of relatively affordable homes, but also it changes the character sometimes on the streets in ways that kind of it's in an intrusive way, I should say.
Yeah. So along those same lines, Myers, like, couldn't we, I mean, instead of limiting it to 2,500 feet and over, wouldn't we just any new build impose this? And wouldn't that prevent us from running afoul of equal protection? Like, I mean, don't we run afoul potentially of equal protection if we impose it only on 2,500 square feet and above?
Yes.
All right.
And again, that's always an issue.
Yeah.
When you create these sort of financial disincentives, who's it impacting? And so again, it's an issue. It's an intriguing one, but it's an
Yeah.
issue.
But you can scale it, right? So we could have a very minimal amount under 2,500 square feet and then do the 2.5 or the 5 that you're talking about at larger buildings. I think the other thing, I'm sorry, one comment and then I think the other thing to remember is impact fees, they do discourage tear downs, or at least that's some of the evidence nationally. But the other thing that sometimes happens, depending on how we choose to spend the money, is you can then preserve more modest sized houses because you're sometimes helping those people maintain those houses in a way that they don't become the houses that eventually need to be teared down or become targets for developers to buy them at a lower price because they're not as well kept up.
The word that you mentioned, Neil, is a disincentive. And another consideration is that really the housing impact fee that we're talking about, this concept, it's not really stopping the tear down phenomenon. It may be a disincentive depending on how you structure it, but it still allows people to tear down smaller homes and build larger homes. But I think the intent of the program is to offset that, create a revenue stream to use for funding and in ways that can assist with other projects that are positive for housing.
I assume in terms of the additional research that you all would need to do, that there might be a process to estimate what we might expect in terms of revenue generation. It's a little hard to figure out what to do with the revenue if you have no real idea of what that's going to be.
Right. I mean, if there's the interest, I think the next step for planning and development is we could provide some numbers on historically, how many demolitions have we encountered, potentially what the sizes of those homes were, for instance, what kind of scale are we talking about? And
right.
I mean, this is a fine line in my mind because we have 9,000 homes, roughly 9,000 homes in Webster Groves, and a healthy turnover is important for our housing stock. But I think what we're trying to do is not necessarily say we don't want new houses. We just want to incentivize building more modest homes rather than larger homes.
Yeah, because turnover doesn't have to mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, turnover could be just change of ownership. Not a tear down, turnover. So how are you defining turnover?
Turnover in the aspect of new houses. So in other words, it's important in a community to have new houses built. And I think on a roughly basis, since we came out of the Great Recession, it's between 50 and 70 houses on a yearly basis, which is a really insignificant amount when we have about 9,000 housing units in the city of Webster Groves.
And new houses don't have to be built if you have existing houses that are solid houses that can be renovated and updated and still utilized. I mean, that's some of the things that we're tearing down perfectly good houses.
Absolutely. Exactly. And I think that's where the fine line comes in, is what percentage is the number that we want to encourage building more modest houses if you are going to tear down versus preventing new houses from being built in total or limiting new houses from being built in any significant manner. Because I think it's okay for new houses to be built, but I think in my mind, how I'm interpreting this and what my objective is to limit the number of, for lack of a better term, McMansions being
Right,
built.
right. And I think that that's also where we can look at it in terms of, are the ones that are being replaced, or we have a house that does need to be torn down? Or are we rebuilding it or replacing it with like kind? You know,
Yeah.
instead of replacing the, 15 or the 1,200 square foot house with a 5,000, 4,000 square foot house, because we're definitely seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's what we're kind of trying to discourage. We don't have a problem with, building new houses. How about let's just scale it and make it affordable and.
I think, most communities would welcome incremental investment and renewal. I think that's what most communities want. But there's sometimes a concern when that upsets the balance in terms of design and affordability in the communities.
But how would, there are developers that are moving or either repairing homes that's already built. They put some work into it before they, want to market. It might be probably like a 1,200 square foot home. And it stayed a 1,200 square foot home, but all of a sudden that maybe $75,000, $80,000, $90,000 home, they're selling for over $300,000. That's the problem. I mean, I know of one up on Waymeyer. I was surprised with that house so far. So that's another issue that we need to.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause that's almost, the lesser of the two evils, because he can renovate that house and sell it for $300,000 or tear it down and build one for six or seven, so.
And I mean, I think we all recognize that this is not a solution that's gonna solve everything, right? It's one of many incremental, tools, yeah. I feel like I just have to say it. We had this conversation, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And it became in some members of the public's mind that we were gonna go around and tax anyone who had a house larger than a certain square footage. Can we make clear, and am I correct in assuming the proposal that you're thinking about, that you're want some direction on, is for new construction and new construction alone?
Correct. I mean, that's what I've been asked to review and comment on is new construction.
And new construction as a result of tearing down something else, not additions.
Yes, that was the request to review.
Mayor, if I can. Thank
Yes.
you. And you've done incredibly well. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that this is a proposal.
Yes, right.
We've had a lot of commentary from
Yes.
not only council, but community members as well in terms of how do we stop the tear down phenomenon?
Yeah.
And so this really is just as you write, and it's been a topic for several years. So this really was to generate the conversation again. See, does this have legs? Would council like staff to do additional research in this direction? Do we need to start over again and come up with additional ideas? I think we've got a good sounding board in this draft, because I don't want to call it a proposal.
Right.
But there's a lot of pitfalls in it as well that I think we need to really be careful of. And there may be some unintended consequences as well. So I'm not sure how we go about fully addressing the tear down, but this seems like a good way to start the conversation.
And I think along those lines, Dr. Peebles, I really appreciate that. I think, we have an objective here as a council and a goal. And if we overshoot our shot, then we can correct it, and we can correct it as we just follow it. I think that's what we do, because I mean, we see the problem here and we think, hey, this is at least some kind of tool. And unfortunately, there aren't a lot of communities that have done it. So, there's
Not Missouri.
Yeah, at least not in Missouri, that we may have to reconfigure it as we go.
In beyond Missouri, and I researched it, and certainly my research wasn't exhaustive, but I couldn't find good examples of this in other communities either, outside of a luxury tax that really didn't have much to do with trying to preserve smaller homes. It just had to do with luxury tax.
Well, again, and working on it is working on the language too, and articulating it. And because I think that we may also have larger, greater concern and growing concern. I mean, the whole affordability concern is just widening and it's louder and it's across the nation, and this whole missing middle concept. These are things this may not have been present or been used a lot to date, but what we're getting more of to date is a phenomenon and a lack of affordability for we can't even talk about low to moderate. We talk about middle income, that missing middle. So I think a lot of it has to do with how do we craft the language and articulate it and make sure the message is clear so that we're not talking about existing home ownership and expansion, what we're not, so that it's more clear. I mean, it's a tool. And we need something.
Well, we do. And just along those lines, in looking at all of the research, the missing middle is certainly a conversation in terms of affordability, but it also is truly just the pure sense of diversified housing stock.
Right.
It's really two separate but very connected issues.
We do a really good.
But let's hold on, Jamie hasn't weighed in yet. Let's let some people who haven't weighed in yet. Pam,
I just
you're
want
next.
to also acknowledge, like, if this is, this is an important goal for this council, and that seems like a really creative tool. And I think it's a super interesting. I'm also curious about lot area ratio, which I know this council has discussed in the past. I wasn't a
We
part of
changed it. We didn't just discuss it.
Okay, yeah. And how long ago was that? And does that, why is this still?
3 years.
Well, because we
3
probably
years
could
ago.
readdress it because the areas that what's allowed is still big. I think that it could be even more strict than what it is, number one. And then number two, I think that there could be some consideration to not only the floor area ratio on that lot, but the comparison to the average size on the street. And in the neighbor, I just think that that we have done that. It was changed, and we might even need, and we even have it documented a couple of places throughout the comprehensive plan, considering more restrictive floor area ratio.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we keep that for our goal discussion, which will happen soon, and that we try and focus just a little bit here on direction for this particular issue.
I was just gonna note that it's actually, it seems to me it's more of a practice than a phenomenon. It's a common, and so that's all I was gonna say.
What is the it in that?
Tearing down homes.
Oh,
is a
tearing down. Okay,
practice
gotcha. Yeah,
For development more than a phenomenon.
yeah. Okay.
And sorry, I've spoken a lot, but I like to speak, so. But I was just gonna say, we do a really good job in this city of preserving old houses merely because they're old. I think we can do a really good job, and this helps us preserve affordable housing in Webster Groves. And it's the same concept, just reversed on its head, I think.
All right.
I was gonna say, I appreciate it. I like the thinking of it. I get that it might not be perfect and we might not need to tweak it, and I'm really curious about kind of any legal fees that we need to be aware of. I know we talked about Hancock and other things in there, so just thanks for your work on it, and I think it's worth continuing the discussion on it.
Right. I do not get the sense that any council member necessarily objects to continue to work on this and explore the options. Am I right about that?
Yep.
So I think that we're giving you a green light to continue down this path and maybe come back with an actual proposal at some time. It's sort of wishful thinking on my part too, so. And again, thank you for this very much. And by the way, we realize you haven't been around that long and you've already got this to us. And so we appreciate how quickly you've dug in. So,
Thank you.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. And any other guidance on this? I think we actually have a clear answer on something for a change. All right. Councilmember Smith, could you call for the first and second reading of bill number 9269, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill 9269.
Bill 9269, first reading. An ordinance amending the Code of Webster Groves, Chapter 10, Article 12, Parks, Section 10.1200, locations by naming the recreation complex at 33 East Glendale Road, the Benny Gordon Recreation Complex.
Is there discussion? All right, let's have the second reading then, please.
Bill 9269, second reading. An ordinance amending the Code of Webster Groves, Chapter 10, Article 12, Parks, Section 10.1200, locations by naming the Recreation Complex 33 East Glendale Road, the Benny Gordon Recreation Complex.
All right, thank you. Is there anything anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? All right, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd, could you call for its approval, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second. Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander? Councilmember Hickson Shepherd?
Yes.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Arnold?
Yes. We've made two appointments today to boards and commissions. Randy Drolingus has been appointed to the Old Webster Special Business District Commission. John Lewis has been appointed to the Crossroads Special Business District Commission as well. And I believe that ends our regular meeting. We are going to retreat to the Gordon Room and do a little bit of work on a little discussion of strategic plan, and we'll start with a presentation from the city manager that updates us on some of the progress that's been made. So we'll all migrate that way. And for the general public, you're welcome to come and listen to that. You're also welcome to go on home and do other interesting things with your evening. We have moved back to work session, as you can tell by our background. And the idea is to talk a little bit about our strategic planning and set some goals for council for whether we want to say 6 months, the next year. But as the city manager, and this has come from several council members, the idea that they would like to do this, but the city manager and I have been discussing what's the most effective way to do that. And in that discussion, we came to the conclusion that an update on where we are in our strategic plan is probably the best way to start that, because I think there's been a lot that's gone on both within City Hall and with some other activities that not everybody on council is aware of. And so to get that update first, and then we'll spend a few minutes talking here, but I want us all to have a chance to digest this just a little bit before having a full-on discussion about what our goals as a council are. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Peoples, and she and I talked about, she's going to go really fast in some portions because we all got this. So please go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to go fast through the majority of it. It was really just to kind of prep you all for the conversation. If you have any questions about it another time, I'm happy to spend time chatting about it. So please don't feel like you can't ask. It may be super fast.
We're done.
Might be done.
Maybe that magnifying glass.
I don't know. Where did Catherine go? Oh,
There you go.
Oh, look at that.
We'll double click.
Just randomly click, that helps.
Uh-huh. Okay. We have a screen. So our guiding principles: inclusion, foundation in the arts, fiscal integrity, purposeful land use, open communication and transparency, and partnering with neighboring communities. Our strategic goals, just as a reminder, as you all have your conversation: provide excellence in service, achieve diversity, equity, and inclusion, cultivate a diverse housing stock, ensure long-term fiscal integrity, strengthen economic development, and adopt sustainable practices. The tactics really get to the meat of what you all are going to discuss as you go through the prioritization exercises. As you know, the departments worked really hard on the tactics to match the goal areas. The problem is we have 114 tactics, and that does not capture everything we're doing, and nor does it account for what the daily business is, addressing daily regular city residents and needs. So there's a lot within that. So in terms of city staff, our next steps is we're looking at those tactics and we're really trying to pare them down. What just is routine business, what tactics go along with the priorities. However, this discussion that council has this evening will help drive that. Strategic goal areas. Want to just give a quick update on where we're really excelling at, and I'm not going to read all of those, and this is not exhaustive. We're doing a lot more than this, but there's some just really important things on there. Of course, we're investing in leadership, recruitment. We've had our leadership retreat, which we're continuing to have quarterly, investing a lot in cybersecurity training, which you're going to hear an IT update soon from Mr. Peterson, and we've got some real needs. Magnet, Tyler, New World. Strategic goal area 2, achieve diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was just speaking with Councilman Hickson Shepherd in the other room about tonight's meeting. Some of this stuff is hard to quantify and put on our dashboard in terms of what we're doing. But if you think about this evening's meeting, we welcomed fellows. We had Chief Aceves read proclamation in Spanish. We're doing a lot to move the needle. It's not all huge things, but it's all meaningful. Cultivate a diverse housing stock. We've had some conversations about this evening. We also heard about the stormwater master plan. As you all know, we've got safe streets for all, multiple other things that go into that. We recently are out of budget season and we will soon go back into budget season. It is always budget season, but we're doing a lot to ensure long-term fiscal integrity. Strengthen economic development. We're of course working on the journey to Destination WG with the comprehensive plan process, launching new interactive business directory, Blue Dot. You heard about that some tonight. There's many things that are happening in that area as well. Sustainable practices. The first bullet I think is the most important. We're living out Forever Webster Groves. We have a lot of sustainability discussions, initiatives. We're really doing some work there. So we've got tons of strengths. And again, this is not exhaustive. We have our staff is our greatest asset, our community as well. We've got a ton of community input into our projects. I think we have excelled in terms of that transparency and communication. We're really reaching out to community. We've got new leaders. They're bringing new thoughts, new ideas, new energy to the work. All of our staff are dedicated. City Council, of course, we have your support, your engagement, and tonight we hope to have some of your decisions.
Not necessarily tonight.
Okay.
Good try though.
He snuck it in there.
But she knew the real answer.
Right.
You can't blame a girl for trying. All right. So of course we have barriers and opportunities, and just like the list of strengths was not exhaustive, neither are the barriers. We have many barriers and challenges. As much as our new staff they're wonderful, but they also need time to acclimate. And as you can see, our 2 new directors, we have put them out there right away. They've done a great job, but they also need time to dig into the work, to assess, to become more familiar with their staff, their team, the city. As you all know, FY25 is the first full budget to align with the strategic plan. We've done a great job, but there's still refinement needed. Reporting and alignment, I won't read all of that. Alignment of boards and commissions. So in order to prepare for this, because obviously each of the directors, we didn't have time for them to go through each of the tactics, but we did a quick survey monkey. Tiara and Eric really helped put that together. We had not only the department directors, but their leadership teams respond to this, talk to us about their tactics, what the boards and commissions that they staff are working on. There are 60 initiatives for boards and commissions right now, 60 plus. And as you can see, only 8 of those align to the strategic plan. Again, this is a good thing. Our boards and commissions, they're active, they're community members, they're doing things that are important to the community. We only have so much capacity, so many resources, and so that's a discussion point. Again, more strengths. I went backwards. Don't know how that happened. Okay. From the survey monkey, just a word cloud. We all like word clouds. It's always interesting to me the things that rise to the top. So the question asked was the 3 challenges to implementing the strategic plan. Staff, time, lack of resources, technology. We've got to continue giving staff the tools they need. Personnel, overloaded projects, recruitments. We're trying everything we know how to do, but it's still difficult recruiting, hiring's on there. fiscal, so, we've got some budget things, talent. That one I dug into quite a bit because we have great staff. I will continue to say that. But we've really delved into some specialized needs, whether it's stormwater, whether it's a lot of the sustainability things. And while we have great staff, we don't necessarily have the subject matter expertise. And that's true whether it's within finance, whether it's within our IT needs. So that is going to continue to be a challenge. Well,
You need one of those things like MSD guy.
I do. I need time. What resources do you need? Training, maintenance of the things that we have, time. We need time. Things are flying at us fast. You know what? I'm done. I'm gonna turn it over to you all. There are a few more slides. You all have seen it. Essentially, I want to brag on staff. I want to let you know how hard everybody is working, but we do need your assistance with prioritizing and really understanding what are those first things first and do they align with the budget?
So I'm just gonna mention a couple of things before we start our discussion on the last slide. Because I think what Marie's presented to us really shows how much progress has been made on a lot of the tactics that that were identified out of our goal areas. But, so she lists 4 points that she wanted to have frame our goal setting discussion. One is effective prioritization aligns tasks with goals and vision. I don't know how much prioritization we've really done to this point. Understanding urgency and importance aids in informed decision-making. I know boards and commissions, I know all of us in council would like everything to be done urgently, and that just doesn't make sense. We need to provide some guidance there. Optimizing time and resources increases productivity and strategic achievements. And by concentrating on select goals, you can allocate your resources, time, and energy more effectively, leading to better execution and higher quality results. So I think that it was important to just mention those things in talking about this. What I'm going to propose is that we spend a little time talking about this tonight, but I do think we all need to reflect a little bit about what are the most important things to each one of us. Because keep in mind, none of us get our own priority. It's not as if we get 7 things to say to staff, we want you to work on these 7 because one was Jamie's and one was Karen's and one was mine. This is a consensus building process where we as a council come together to decide what the priorities are. And not everybody's going to agree all the time on them. And so what I'm going to propose is that we spend a little time, maybe each of us talking about what kinds of things are most important to you. I'm going to ask you to take 24, 48 hours to reflect and then send me a note that has the 5 priorities that are specific, your specific 5 priorities. What are the 5 tactics that are on there that you really think are things that we should be moving full speed ahead on? And then also maybe tell me what the 2 most important goal areas are for you so that if we don't necessarily, we're all over the place, maybe we have some more consensus on the goal areas. And then Marie's going to kill me for this. But if there is something that is really important to you that's not listed in these tactics, let's go ahead and have it submit it. So what I will then do is consolidate all that together into a memo that we can then discuss as a follow-up conversation after we've had some more time to review this and have had our initial conversation. So I'm going to maybe suggest, I don't know who wants to go first. I mean, I can go first if we want to, but have each of us maybe spend just a couple of minutes talking about what is it that's most important to you at this point in time for us to work on. And let's just say for the next the next year, from here until beginning of the fall.
Do you want us to be looking at the tactics that we've already, like, so we don't start from scratch? Like, should we be referring back to tactics we already have right now?
Yeah, that are the tactics in the strategic plan.
Yeah, that's what
are designed to be followed. Yes.
Yes.
However, the strategic plan is now more than a year old, so I did want to leave open the
That's the open piece.
possibility.
But right now, when we're having this discussion now, we should be talking about things that are.
Yeah, because
And then
ideally
active
we have
list.
already
Right.
signaled to staff that
Yes.
this is.
I just wanted to clarify,
On
we're not coming
page
up with
15.
new stuff.
Page 15 are tactics, or are those? Current city initiatives.
So those are even broader, right? I
Okay.
mean, the tactics are really listed in pages 5 through.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Or sorry, under the strategic goal
Goals.
area.
Okay.
And if you'd like to go back to the actual strategic plan, they're listed there as well. And I don't think Marie has every single tactic in these slides.
I don't, but I bet we could get them pulled out. If you want them on the screen.
Well, I was sort of hoping that we knew we were having this conversation so that, people had maybe given a little thought to it. No one wants to go first?
Well, I can start,
Thank you.
but I'm
Pam.
gonna go back to the city initiatives.
Mhm.
15, page 15, and just say, to me, the new comprehensive plan needs to be very pragmatic and logical. For example, we have sites within commercial districts, for example, that aren't making any revenue. I'm thinking of Pacific neighborhood. So we have commercial places that aren't making revenue, and I think we need to also rationally protect our green spaces and our natural resources. Basically, just looking at it logically. We don't want to preserve the green space in on the North Pacific area, and we don't want to commercially develop our next to our parks, for example, or within our parks. So that's what I'm thinking.
So if I were to summarize that as a goal for us in the next year, would this be fair to say that one of your goals would be that we, during the in completing the comprehensive planning process, we make sure that we have a realistic plan to generate some revenue and to protect some of our green spaces?
Okay.
It may be more than that, because we're gonna write all these
Right,
down, but
right.
but again,
yeah,
I want us to think in
big
terms
picture,
of
that-
goal language, right?
Yes.
So we're looking at, I'm sorry, can we done?
You don't have to do all three at once. We can
Yes,
bounce
I'm
around a
done.
little.
So we're gonna be looking at the strategic goals that's listed here.
No, I'm asking each of you, we're not gonna go, there's so many of them, we as a council can't go through every single one of them and rank order them. So what I'm asking you all to do is identify the 5 most important to you.
Tactics or goals?
Tactics.
Okay.
I have also asked you then, so goal areas, right? Isn't that what we call them?
Yeah.
I've also asked you to tell me what your 2 most important goal areas are, because I think that gives us some more information as well.
So if you want to go, Emerson.
No, go ahead.
I think for me, tactics wise, I think concentrating on the IT master plan, both using the technology that we currently have and what technology we do need, and then also cybersecurity. The other thing is just based off, I'm not sure if this is a true tactic on our plan, but based off of the data that Dr. Peoples gave us tonight and also the information from the directors, I would like us to think about how we can utilize director time better, particularly when it comes to the boards and commissions. I still believe that we can do a better job of having all of us be more of a committee head or chairperson rather than relying upon staff, where it's our commission, our board, where we're directing it rather than letting staff direct it, which then would require us to report back to council and be held accountable to council.
And we're not like digging into all those right now, right? We're just listing.
We're just listening at this point. And David, hopefully some of that will happen tomorrow. Tomorrow's our meeting with chairs and vice chairs. And one of the things that I certainly plan to point out to them is that we've got 60 initiatives from boards and commissions, and not even half of them correspond with the strategic plan. And part of what you want to do, I think, also would be, as we move to a stronger plan, they have to submit their goals for the year. That should help too. Anybody else have any ideas they wanna throw out?
Mine's sort of cheating.
Sustainability.
I mean, but I think you know, the just the opportunities that exist within like Destination WG and the comprehensive plan in achieving some of these goals. You know, when you're looking at, I guess it's just a too narrow a lens to look through, like Destination WG and making sure. I don't know.
Just say it.
Yeah, so like making sure that we're hitting those sustainability pieces, that we're hitting DEI. When we're looking at our Safe Streets for All grant, like how does that impact neighborhoods with you know, that like don't have sidewalks and that sort of thing? Like, does that help us with obviously creating safety? What does it do for, you know, the vibe for each little community, as far as feeling safe and neighborhoody and I think our comprehensive plan just holds so much potential. I'm really just thinking out loud and I'm not able to really narrow this down yet.
I think for me, just looking at the goal areas, I'd probably focus in on the long-term fiscal integrity. I know we've had a lot of talks about the need to talk about revenue. I feel like that fits into that and continuing those kind of revenue conversations. Thought it was really interesting when we had the update from Eric, was that last meeting? And he was talking about like the bang for the buck that you get, like when you do commercial on a lot versus, you know, additional residential. I thought that was a really interesting framework to think about things. So just kind of that. And then with that, the goal area 5, which is strengthening economic development. I mean, I actually I'm kind of similar, but maybe a little bit different with Pam, but looking at that Pacific area again, I feel like, you know, we looked at it with Douglas Hill and then we looked at it after that. And then we said we'd look at it when we did the strategic plan, and now we're doing the strategic plan. So I really feel like
Comprehensive
plan. Yeah. So I really feel like we owe it to the wider community, but that localized community too, to actually like make some decisions and engage with them and figure out what we as a narrow and broad community want to do with that space.
Karen, you wanna add anything at this point?
Well, right now, I mean, again, well, one of the things that Emily's saying, just the big one for me that I've been talking about too, is just our revenue. Just focusing on that and what we can do again from a commercial perspective to generate some more revenue and take some weight off of our residential tax paying clients. And so, but I need to take it away and look at it.
Yeah, that's fine. And that was the whole point, so that we can digest a little bit too. Emerson, do you have anything you want to throw in right now?
Well, so we're gonna be looking at all the strategic goal areas. Is that correct?
Well, each of us individually will.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what you're looking is to, what is it in provide excellence in service? What out of that goal area do we want to prioritize?
Yeah, I'm not doing it by goal. I'm suggesting we not do it by goal area. I'm suggesting that we do it. We may not, that we focus on the tactics across all the goal areas. Because, you know, if we come up with 3 or 4 in each goal area, we're still asking staff for a whole lot to get done pretty quickly.
So if I'm looking at investments and training, I should dig down into the tactics and how that was going to be accomplished and bring that forward.
I think that one, is, I mean, I think it's fine to just have that as what you would, it's okay with me, because that one, I mean, it does run across departments, but it makes sense, yeah.
I mean, pull another one out, long-term fiscal integrity.
Yeah.
So I should look at goal number 4, and look at all the tactics that were created for goal number 4, and then pull out the tactics one I think we should prioritize.
Or maybe 2, or maybe 3. Yeah, but I guess all I'm saying is you don't have to pull one out of each of the goal areas, right? Some goal areas are gonna be more important to you than others.
Right. And for me, I probably would, my number 1 goal area is how I would rank it. Number 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
So like digesting this here, going back and like we agreed on, you know, all the high level stuff. We got down to the goals, but I think right now, if I'm looking at it correctly, all the tactics are from the staff departments.
They are.
I don't think we have, so I'm
Well,
kinda
we've seen
thinking.
them all and we approved them all.
No.
Yeah.
But what I mean is, like, do you want us to pull out those, or are we creating the council tactics as
No,
part of this?
I think we need to stick with what's in the strategic plan. Now, again, I did say if there's something else that is a burning desire for you,
I
because
got,
times change
Yeah.
and it's a living document. But, you know, if our expectation of staff is that we want you to work on this strategic plan, then I think the vast majority of what we're talking about should come from.
I'm just trying to get the
plans.
the framework, so that is helpful for research.
Yeah.
We're pulling tactics that really the departments have written under our guidance
Right.
and goals and all of
Yeah.
that. And figuring out like which ones do we kind of want to champion of those tactics over the next year.
Right. Now, having said that, you know, Emerson just used the training. That goes across several different departments. So if you look at the strategic plan, you'll see the fire department has a tactic under that. HR has a tactic under that. I think it's perfectly acceptable to say training across the organization should be a priority. So there's a little leeway in here. I know you all want very specific things. I'm trying to manage this without a wide open conversation where I'm
That's what I'm
afraid
trying
we'll
to-
have
like, I don't
no,
wanna
yeah,
like add things to the plate, like our plate is full, we're trying to like.
yeah.
I don't wanna take that analogy too far, but you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to focus my brain.
Do you mind repeating the quantity of each thing from us?
I have that.
Thank goodness I wrote it down.
I need 5 tactics most important and 2 most important
Goal areas, anything
Five
that's
tactics.
missing, and
Okay.
with 24 to 48 hours.
No, you're gonna think about it. You're gonna give it
I
to
know.
me by Monday.
Yes, that's,
Monday coming
Monday.
up.
Yes, because I have to write the memo and get it to Katie so it can come out
but
before our
that's
next
more than
meeting.
24 to 48 hours.
No, I thought you
Oh, don't.
I said you probably need to, I think what I meant was, what I said, who knows? You can play back the tape. What I meant was you might just want to think about it for 24 to 48 hours before you start putting together your email to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yes, I would like this from you by the 23rd. Five priority areas, five specific tactics, 2 goal areas, and then your wild card selection.
So wild card selection on the goal areas?
It's like, is there something that's not in the strategic plan that, I shouldn't have offered new language. That was the problem.
I like wild cards.
I know, if I thought of it 10 minutes ago, it would have been fine.
Okay.
Not a joke about it.
Well, just so you all know too, in terms of what my list may look like, I'm with those of you who mentioned revenue. I think that's a fundamental conversation we have to have. And then I'm gonna go to some of these housing things. You know, we have this, we have ADUs, an initial presentation on ADUs. There's some real housing things that I think might be great priorities for us.
Because of course, diversity and
I think the
housing.
confidential. They are not confidential. This will be, this is all sunshineable.
All right, yeah,
Yes.
that's good to know. Just
Yeah.
my language.
I mean, when I write the memo, it won't necessarily name who said what. I'm gonna try and group things together. Okay, do we have since it's getting late, do we have the assignment?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm looking at the city manager, because of course this isn't her assignment. It's designed to give her some clear guidance. We'll see how well we get there.
5 areas and 5 tactics.
2 areas in 5 tech. There are only 6 areas.
I just screwed it around.
Okay.
Yeah, Mayor, as I was looking at some of the staff comments along with the 60 boards and commissions,
Yeah.
thanks. It's just a statement because it's on my mind. But sustainability, of course, is woven through everything that we're doing. And I keep reading about a sustainability department. It's come from residents, it's come from council members, it's come from staff, just in terms of, we have this, the sustainability department. We don't have one. We don't even have a full sustainability staff. We have somebody who's 20 hours a week and she does great work. But as you're thinking about this, that just keeps coming top of mind. I'm not assigned this, but in terms of priorities, that seems like that one is just one that continues to rise to the top.
So build a sustainability department.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, as we know, the interpretation might be different.
The other thing that I noticed tonight, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Was in the intuition and logic presentation, in the documentation that we got, it mentioned like a stormwater commission.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't have one of those. I mean, we have 2 similar, like it could probably fit somewhere, or maybe there's not a commission, maybe it's public works, but I thought that was another interesting thing is like, what does that mean for Webster with this stormwater commission?
I saw it as well, and I wasn't quite as interested, but I thought, wow.
It was green space and sustainability that chose it.
To get,
Yeah.
So we have so
there
many
you go,
important
subcommittee.
things. They're all important.
there was a direct subcommittee.
Thank you all.
All right. In the interest of us all being able to leave here at some point tonight, I'm going to ask, I believe it's number 1, for a brief closed session under number 1, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed session pursuant to Missouri Statute 610.021 subsection 1.
Second.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yep.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Well.
Did you just get off the plane?
He heard.
All right,
both.
so we have a closed session, so that means, for this one, I think it's council and, who do we want in here?
Or
Robert.
doing that, right?
Yeah,